Shadow Show.
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 Shadowing it.
I hadn't seen any of the commercials for Tulsa King before last night. That's not something that I knew existed before last night, even though it's in its third season. I don't watch a ton of Prime. Well, I thought you would know that.
Stallone, yeah.
Yeah, it's Stallone. He is now 78 years old. He's my father's age.
I thought you were just saying Tiger King.
Yeah.
The reason that I thought of Stugotz during it is because the commercial for Tulsa King was Stallone being asked what he knows about turbines and then responding with, "I know they blow." And I'm like, that is a Stugotz show if I have ever seen one right there. Stallone's still playing the hits at 78 years old.
And people are still buying it. I mean,
That's what I know about the Dolphins.
I also
Wait, I don't get it.
saw a great story yesterday, the biggest and most important story from yesterday, and I want more information on this. The more you can give me, the better. A Twins 6th round pick was basically, after being drafted in the 6th round, 2 months later, is playing in a playoff game, and now the Twins have released him because they found out he was telling the opposing team as the catcher what pitches were coming. And I just need more information on why it is. Was he gambling on the game? Was he like, I don't know anything other than a headline on this story. I need some information on this story.
The speculation is he just wanted the season to end. There were reports he'd been telling teammates and coaches alike that he just was hoping the season would end a little sooner.
Well, but you're giving guys longer at bats and more offense. It'll go quicker if you get them out.
It's not efficient. I mean,
But not if the Twins make the playoffs, you know?
yeah, the Twinkies.
This guy's a hero.
Less games is what he wanted.
You can't play for a team after that, can you? Like, how good do you have to be in order for that to be on your resume and you get to keep having a career after that? You have to be better than a 6th round pick, do you not?
What did he have, like a vacation planned or something? Like, what did he have to get to?
Jess, how did you enjoy being at the Dolphin game yesterday?
It was so brutally hot out. Remember when we were like, oh, well, it's at night, so it won't be as bad.
I don't know why you guys thought that. I think we should rename Dolphin Stadium the Swamp. I think that the Hurricanes should take that back with them after beating Florida.
We took that in Tom Petty.
That's right.
Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. I hear him chat from the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the walking. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls let it tell me I'm awesome, yeah. Hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the sheets. You came for one more, forget my peace. You take the west, I'll take on the east. I'ma put him in the cage, never let out the. I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Man so tough, but man's keep walking, yeah. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls, let it tell me I'm awesome, yeah. Hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that.
I want to put last night's game result off to the side for a second, Stugotz, and I also want to put off to the side just the season, the football season.
Okay.
And I just want for a moment to absorb the idea of an NFL head coach kissing a helmetless player on the top of the head, and all of us watching that and seeing a care for someone that we are more concerned about when it comes to brain injury than anyone in that violent sport. We don't know the effects, empirical, of concussions. We do know, according to data and people who know more about this stuff than we do, that Tua is more susceptible after having had them to concussions than he would be if we hadn't already seen the physical manifestations of a seizure arm and all of us having the same reaction to what looked like a fairly benign hit that he went looking for. And then all of us are watching a football game where I can say the following, and everyone is not stunned by it. A player who was dead on the field last season and forced a game's cancellation hit another player in a way that didn't look that violent to any of us, Tua seeking that contact. And the result was, again, not merely a concussion, Stugotz, because I thought he could have been concussed on the pick six because I'm worried about him. It's like watching something that's made of porcelain shake in an earthquake. I'm worried about him in the pocket, outside the pocket. Anytime he runs, I don't want him running. I'm not watching football this way with anybody else, Stugotz. And when he initiates the hit and is on the field, he then gives you the hand gestures where you're diagnosing him on your television because it's that obvious that this person that you're concerned about has now damaged his brain again. And I just don't know what to do with that. I know people care about the result last night and statement game and does it ruin the season and do you have to get another quarterback and all that stuff. But in the middle of it, what am I supposed to do with and how are we supposed to discuss that we love this wonderful thing that grabs us on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays? And I can say that a player who was dead on the field last season injured another one whose brain I'm worried about more than anyone else in that sport. And the result is a very human coach kissing a player on the head as if he's a child in a Little League game.
It was kind of an amazing moment to see Mike McDaniel and just see the emotion from him the rest of the game. He was in another place. He was concerned about his friend. He was concerned about Tua. He was concerned about the guy that has taken this journey with him since he became Dolphins head coach. Dan, like you say the obvious things. It's a violent sport, and some guys get through it fairly unscathed, and some guys don't. And Tua obviously is one of the guys that has not been able to get there.
But I guess what I'm asking you is, how am I supposed to discuss the following? Like, when is the proper care to show on this? You had a game last night that revealed to you, yet again, how flimsy the foundation is that everything the Dolphins are built is on. You got a wide receiver who's reckless and can get in trouble at any time that you've given a ton of money. You've got a quarterback you've given a ton of money that all of last season helped us forget that this was a possibility, and then you gave him the money. So you've got the foundation over here, and it seems secondary to somebody is playing through brain problems that are problematic and noticeable to all in a way that can't even be hidden by football, which has, for a long time, Stugotz, been able to hide this particular thing when it happens, and it can't be hidden when he can't have a concussion quietly. When you see his hands do that, it's not happening all over the league. The physical manifestation of you're worried about one guy's brain more than any other in that sport, and then the hands go and stiffen in a way that tell you, oh, I could diagnose him from my couch. He can't come back into this game, and who knows when he's going to come back, and is he going to have the conversations again with his mother who wants him to retire for understandable reasons?
We're armed with the visual of this particular player having that moment 2 or 3 separate times now. And so that's why you're watching him the way you're watching him, with concern. And we all should be concerned for Tua. We've never seen a player lay out on a field like that, not once, but twice. I think 3 times now this has happened to Tua.
Well, twice physically in a way that makes your stomach turn.
I think it's been 4 diagnosed concussions in 5 years, because he had one at Alabama, and then there was the Bengals game in 2022, and then the Packers game in 2022 where they shut him down for the year, and then last night. But of course, if you're counting the time that he fell during the Bills game before the Bengals game in 2022, then it would be 5. But obviously, we still don't really know what happened, but we know that the NFL changed their concussion protocols after that, and he probably shouldn't have played Thursday Night Football 4 days after that.
So you've got a short week, Stugotz, and again, we will get to the result because I know a lot of people care about the result, and that went about as poorly as it could for the Dolphins before that even happened. He's trying, because there's so many expectations on this season, because the Bills have been statistically better than this team in a way that's pretty overwhelming, Stugotz. When you look at, they've won 12 of their last 13 against the Dolphins, and the scoring difference is the Bills have scored 443 points and the Dolphins have scored 248. They've outscored them by 200 points, and it's been a bit of a mirage the last couple of seasons in that it seems like the Dolphins are close because the games are close, and it doesn't seem like there's very much difference between them, but that difference can't be argued against. 12-1 in their last 13, the Bills are, and they didn't even need Josh Allen to be good last night, but I have trouble discussing just the game when what we're talking about is the brain working through its liquid protective buffer, hitting the skull and short-circuiting the team's entire foundation.
I think that's the most disastrous game in franchise history. That's right up there with the Jags playoff loss where you realize, all right, we're starting over.
Right.
This was as devastating a blow to a franchise because not only were they shown inside their own division that they are not very close, but I started worrying about Tua's career before the concussion. He was really, really bad that game. Terrible performance from Tua. And then the hit happens and you realize, oh, this franchise, it may be sunk in terms of this blueprint now.
And it sucks, too, because I think the hit happens because he's not playing well and is trying to make a play and then kind of forgets I should slide here or whatever happens in his head. Obviously happens so fast. And I think that's a symptom of, the game just not going the way that we all thought it would go with the Dolphins having this big lead by halftime and taking some deep shots. I mean, he threw how many interceptions? So it really does feel like this was, his attempt to just sort of put the team on his back and make a play, and then it just ends horribly.
I'll ask and read some more to find out if the two interceptions before the third one were his fault. It didn't seem to me like either one of them were his fault. His last three interceptions thrown, he's throwing to the people you do not want him throwing to. They're not the star players. It's Chase Claypool. Yeah. It's a bunch of people who aren't the star players.
Certainly a rough deflection, but also that ball's not on target. And when you don't deliver a ball that's on target, funny things can happen.
It hit him in the shoulder.
No, the first one.
Who the hell is Dubois?
The first one, not his fault. The second one, debatable. The third one, obvious.
Yeah, the third one, terrible.
They got worse. They got worse, each one.
All right, but I thought the first two weren't his fault, and we will get into the minutia in a second. The third one, though, illustrated to me the thing that we're saying about how flimsy the foundation of the Dolphins is, where everything has to be perfect in order for Tua to be who he is. What happened on the third one, Stugotz, is he's in a third down situation. Was it third or fourth down? Whichever one it was, he's got the left side of his line is on the sidelines. His offensive linemen are on the sidelines. And now if he does a hiccup, if his first read isn't there, if it's not out in 2 seconds, the thing that they've been doing, Stugotz, for an entire year, they managed to pull off the magic trick of Tua gets rid of the ball faster than everybody. It covers everyone's deficiencies, including that Armstead's always hurt. But the moment Armstead goes to the sideline, the moment the left side of their line is out, you're now worried about, oh my God, this defensive line is so good. Ed Oliver can't be blocked by the starters. What's going to be coming up the middle on Tua? And is it going to get there before the 2.5 seconds? He hiccups on the first read. Now he knows he's got a down and distance situation where he's got to make a play. Now the defensive line is on him, and he can't go back fast enough or throw the ball far enough to even get it out of bounds, and he's basically throwing a punt to a defensive back that gets returned easily for a touchdown. And I honestly thought, Stugotz, and this isn't something I do with any other player in the league, I thought on that hit, he could be concussed.
Sure.
Because of
on any hit.
Because
Dan, really.
He went backward, though. But it's the hitting of the helmet on the
Correct.
things they avoided last
Yes.
year was him getting thrown like a rag doll in desperate situations because he was getting rid of the ball so fast.
And then you pair that with Josh Allen. To me, the interceptions were bad. The back-breaking play was that 3rd and long. Allen scrambles. It's good coverage. Jalen ran, they covered as long as they could,
and Josh Allen throws a guy open for a touchdown on third down, those are the plays that Tua can't make.
Wasn't a touchdown. He stopped at the 1 yard line.
No, Shakir. It was the touchdown play I'm talking about. He rolled right and he hit Shakir for a touchdown. It was like he was covered for like 7 seconds, and then finally he breaks free and Josh Allen throws him open, and it's like only Josh Allen and like one other guy can make that play. And that's the difference between Josh Allen and Tua.
I understand wanting to debate the interceptions, whose fault it was. The offense stunk. They weren't able to push the ball against a depleted Bills team. Yes, that defensive line of Oliver, Rousseau, and Von Miller, they absolutely ate. That's a great unit. Everything else behind that, depleted.
Yep.
In fact, another impactful injury to their linebacker room. They have a really bad situation there. You put up 10 points against a depleted Bills defense, you're not close to them right now. You're not remotely close to them. That is devastating.
I can't say off of one game you're not remotely close to them when they would have won the division if they had beaten the Titans last year. I'm not willing to say that based on
I'm applying the context of their franchise quarterback may never play again.
Okay,
which needs to be applied.
All right. Yes. I don't think
he also may play in 2 weeks.
Today, I don't think.
No way.
I don't think today.
There is a way,
guys. But this is the day to ask those questions. This is the day that everybody's asking those questions. Hindsight's undefeated. Everybody's wondering if anybody in that sport should be wearing a Guardian cap. Even though I'm not sure it helps there in that situation where the awareness was dialed down to 0 from Tua. But why isn't he wearing a Guardian cap? These are all valid questions as people search for answers.
You mentioned Jalen Ramsey, and Jalen Ramsey's quote was the following to GQ about Josh Allen. Quote, I think Josh Allen is trash. I don't care what nobody says. He's trash, and it's going to show, too. That's a stupid draft pick to me. The Buffalo Bills beat the Miami Dolphins yesterday and needed very little from Josh Allen to do it. That was not me watching Josh Allen and in any way other than a couple of plays seeing the player that I fear, Stugotz, which is the ultimate compliment I can give Josh Allen as a player is if I'm on the other side, if I've got a bet on the other side, or if I'm rooting for the defense and Josh Allen and the Bills are going for it on 4th and 9, I'm still scared. I want them to punt. I don't want to take my chances on 4th and 9 against Josh Allen that my choices are I get the ball in good field position or he has a chance of making a 4th and 9. I'd prefer to just get the punt and get him off the field.
Josh Allen was interesting last night. He didn't have to do that much. He was 13 of 19, but the running game was working, and the Dolphins kept turning the ball over. So that's like a perfect win for the Bills where they beat the Dolphins, division rival, 31-10 on the road. Their quarterback never had to run. He didn't have to do anything.
James Cook had the best touchdown first half a Bill has ever had. He had 3 touchdowns in the first half, and he's not the player on that team I fear, even though he's very good. The player I fear is their quarterback. And think about how it is that you view the Bills, and you guys tell me how often you sit around worried that Josh Allen's going to get hurt by somebody.
Never.
Even though he plays the way Lamar Jackson does, and I worry about Lamar Jackson, but the size of Josh Allen is such physically, and the way defensive linemen sometimes bounce off of him, I'm not sitting there worried that Josh Allen's going to get hurt. I was reminded on a scramble that Tua had that was 13 yards. Nobody expects him to run anymore. He did so little running last year, Stugotz. He was so infrequently out of the pocket. The Dolphins are playing a foundational game of how do we keep our guy safe and hidden from the violence. Like the whole thing is built around how does he get rid of the ball quickly enough, decisively enough to play the way Tom Brady was playing where he wasn't likely to get hurt.
But Dan, 2 seasons ago, he worked on the sliding motion, and last year we saw it. And you figured it would carry over for the remainder of his career. This year, it seemed like the Dolphins and Tua wanted to get him outside the pocket, wanted him to be more mobile so he could make some plays with his legs because that was the criticism of Tua, and he was doing it. Like, he did it in week 1. He did it again last night. He was making plays we hadn't seen before with his legs. So I don't know how much they were trying to hide him this year.
Do you understand, though, what I'm saying? When he runs for 11 yards and a first down, I don't want to see him running.
I know.
I don't have this experience with any other football player, Stugotz. I don't have this experience when a punter is faking a punt and running to the sidelines and risking being hit by a Sean Taylor.
I agree with you. I don't want to see it either, but it's clear the Dolphins wanted him to do it, and Tua wanted to be a guy that can get outside the pocket and make some plays with his legs.
Let me ask you guys this, because we are not experts here on what I'm about to say. Did it look to you like a hit that would result in that?
No.
Understanding
As it happened, as it was developing, I kind of had that fear. Yeah, I was at the edge of my seat when I saw, like, oh, he's diving at the defender. Like, yeah, a brief flashing moment before contact, I was worried, like, why is he doing this?
Because of the player, right?
Well, yeah.
Like if Josh Allen
honestly,
does the same thing, you're not worried.
Honestly,
right.
any player. I'm less worried if it's Josh Allen, but going head first for a quarterback, what's weird is, like, I know Hamlin's catching some stuff on social media, and as is his clone, but he didn't even make this tackle. Like, Tua just ran into him.
This is why I'm saying it was fourth down. I don't know how much he knows, right? It was fourth down, and he had to get a first down, and I don't know if he had the spatial awareness of saying, I better not slide here, because if I slide, I'm going to lose 2 yards on this, and so I have to go head first on this. But I did think that he initiated all of that, and so I wasn't expecting any of that to result in his hand spasming in a way that, again, makes us uncomfortable.
We need the advancement in technology to get a yellow line on the field. Yeah. So at home, I'm half kidding, but if there's a yellow line there, he sees it and he slides. Because it's hard to know where he is on the field. Like, I get it. Everyone's like, you got to know to slide there. Like, if you're running on the field, you don't know exactly where the first down
Wait, so a yellow line is going to prevent guys from going head first into players?
Saying, in that spot, if a guy's running and he knows he passed the line. I am half kidding, but it would have helped. If we're asking for Tua to slide, there's no way for him to know to slide at, like, it's hard to judge at.
I'm with you. Change the entire sport because your quarterback got hurt.
Yeah. Make it safer for everyone. I want Josh Allen to know that the yellow line.
I think what Jess said earlier was on the money. I think Tua was trying to fire up his sideline
pressing
and was pressing on a drive they absolutely had to have, and he wanted to get up and do something physical to show his team that he was rallying the troops, and it ended up blowing in his face. I would say it's the most devastating game in franchise history, not just because the injury, excuse me, but also because you burned up 2 home games. You could have been 0-2 in them. The offense, which we all celebrated, has had a handful of good moments this season. They just don't look good with their QB1 out there.
They had a second half in week 1. Yeah, but that's it.
They had an 80-yard play and then some other crucial plays in there, but their offense did not look good overall against a Jags team you're supposed to be considerably better than.
I'm telling you, one punch away.
Dude.
Fight through it, Mike.
And then, I mean, that's a Thursday night game against a division rival that you have to have for this season to work out the way that you want to. They just seem really far away right now, and with all the mystery surrounding their quarterback, that's as crushing a loss as you can have as a Dolphin fan.
Yeah, it just sucks so much. I've really enjoyed watching Tua in his entire career since college, and it just, like, watching that last night was so just hard to watch, and I just feel so bad for him. I don't know if there's anything else, like, to even say other than, like, I feel so bad for him.
But also, why were Robbie Chosen and Dubois on the field?
On the team.
I mean, like, our receivers are healthy right now. Like,
they've had trouble with a third receiver for a long time now. Odell Beckham was supposed to be that, and he has not been healthy. I want to go back to what it is that Jess said, though. I don't believe that I can think of another player who has this set of ingredients around him where it's an outpouring of, I'm really sorry that football keeps happening to you, and I'm really sorry and sad that you are a decent human being who people seem to really like as just a person, and that you go to bed at night, and we do not know how much pain is and fear is in his sleep. I remember the first time I had a conversation, Chris Chambers once upon a time, when this stuff was celebrated, when we could celebrate the fact that a giant hit across the middle leaves a receiver with his arm extended and spasming because he's been hit so hard. I don't know of another player that has around him this feeling of, I just feel so bad for him, because Chris Chambers was talking about his head ringing for weeks. These players don't talk about their ailments. They don't publicly talk about how their sleep is affected or how much fear they have at night when they cannot sleep because the pain in their head is making it so they're afraid of, they're very alone, right? No matter, you can go to doctors, you can be with your coaches, you can be surrounded by football players who know or think they know some of the dangers. But when you go to bed at night, you're alone with your fear of, my mother would like me to retire because she thinks that I'm going to be drooling in my 30s because of what this sport is doing to my brain.
It's hard to think of another player, a current player, a player who's in his 20s, the prime of his career, the prime of his life. It's hard. Like, you see guys after the fact, after the NFL, you see Jim McMahon right now, you'll feel bad for Jim McMahon. Like, what that game did to Jim McMahon, his mind and his body, you'll feel bad for him, but you didn't know it in the moment.
Let me ask all of you this question. Who's second place on what it is that we're talking about? You're watching football and you're worried someone's going to get hurt. And then when they do get hurt, you just feel sad. You're sitting here and you're conflicted about, I'm watching this thing, and the center of it is a collision between a guy that was dead on the field last year. Because I'm not sitting there doing it for Hamlin. Hamlin's their starting safety, and I'm not doing it for a guy who was dead on the field last year. And it's because we have more information on concussions than we've ever had. The NFL, did the concussion settlement where they finally admit, yeah, it was kind of like tobacco and smoking. We weren't talking about it. But obviously, if we're giving this many millions to a concussion settlement, we will acknowledge that we are indeed doing brain damage. Give me second place. Second place on anywhere, college or pro.
That week to week, I'm worried about their body not holding up. I don't have an example. I only have an example of, like, where one player was so well liked, he got overwhelming sympathy for his situation, and he's still not back on the field, and that was Nick Chubb, where everyone agreed, like, that was devastating, totally unfair, maybe on the dirty side, and he's just one of the good guys of the game, and everyone roots for him.
The only other time that I can remember thinking about this locally, outside of when we were discussing, should Alonzo Mourning be playing, should Chris Bosh be playing or wanting to play, is when anyone would throw inside on Giancarlo Stanton, high and near his head after he'd been hit in the face and his face exploded. But in football, I cannot think of another, not college or pro, and not ever. I can't think of another player where I'm concerned as they're playing the sport that they love. Is this person going to get hurt? And then I see them hurt, and the overwhelming reaction from everybody is, wow, this is just really sad. I feel for him. He's in the middle of a really dark nightmare, and everything the Dolphins built is super flimsy on this as a foundation. One of the things about this, Stugotz, that is interesting to me is it's not just we observers who can all acknowledge we're not nearly as tough as football players. We are not people who really understand what the violence of that thing is, who are worried about Tua and his future. It is Des Bryant saying on Twitter, "That's it, NFL, go ahead and do the right thing. Tua has had entirely way too many concussions. He needs to retire for his longevity health concerns." It's Shannon Sharp saying, "Really hope Tua is okay, but he's got to seriously think about shutting it down." It's Damian Woody saying, "Quality of life has to factor in right now. I'm not even thinking football for him. Got a life to live, and I just want that man to be healthy." It's Louis Riddick saying part of the discussion is going to be about if he should play anymore ever again. That's the reality. It's Nick Wright saying he has to really consider hanging it up after tonight.
The last time I felt that way was there was a Monday Nighter that the Niners were playing in. It might have been Niners-Cardinals, I'm not exactly sure, where Steve Young got his bell rung pretty bad. And it was during a stretch where he was getting bad. And this was before we knew anything really about concussions, but he appeared glassy, and it just kind of felt like it might be the last time we see him the way that we knew him. And same exact feels last night.
Troy Aikman ended up retiring because of concussions, but we didn't see any of the stuff that indicated to us that he was struggling with that. Michael Irvin had something where we thought he was paralyzed on the field, and the neck injury was such that all of us could understand, well, if we've already seen you on the field in a way that worried about paralysis and you've got neck stuff, that sport seems like it might risk paralysis. But it's moved on the body, Stugotz. For me, it used to be about paralysis. I have not seen this kind of outpouring and conversation about someone's head before in football. Like, it is a super unusual thing that all of us are watching this saying, not is he going to have one of those concussions that made Troy Aikman retire, the ones that we never see the physical ramifications of it. He's feeling them and then retiring.
We've never seen it this way before. That's why it's jarring. I mean, that's why it's jarring multiple times. We've never seen it this way before.
But what do you do with what it is that I'm saying? That it's other football players telling a mid-20s human being, get out now. Never mind about the money, the glamour of the position, all of your lifelong dreams. It's other football players saying, nah, you're screwing up your life here, and you need to think about quitting football. Let's play the sound. We talked to Tua about this, and I have regrets. I told you this. I have regrets about how it is that I handled the first time this happened against the Bengals on Thursday night. We talked to Chris Nowitzki, and he was talking about how it was so terrible as a concussion expert, a former wrestler, somebody who's got medical experience. He was telling us that what the Dolphins did and the NFL did by continuing to play him in that Bengals game was so negligent that they should be considering murder charges if he got injured.
For a guy that was still alive.
Yeah, but you guys...
Which is ridiculous. You go involuntary manslaughter there.
Mm-hmm.
You guys laugh at this, and I have my regrets about how we handled some of that, and I further had regrets about how when we talked to Tua during the Super Bowl, that I interviewed him and asked him about the idea of retiring in a way that made a lot of people thought he canceled future interviews during the Super Bowl because of how that questioning went. So I asked him about it again as delicately as I could when we were at camp this year. And he said, yeah, my mom was wanting me to retire.
Was there anyone in your family a couple of years ago urging you to retire, telling you we're worried about you?
Yeah, I would say for sure, especially with what happened with the concussions and whatnot. But we went and seen a doctor, got to go see the doctor and whatnot, got to get all the information that I needed to hear from him on whether it was a good idea or whether it wasn't a good idea, and got to sit down with them, and I basically told them what I wanted to do.
Who was the most vocal in your family telling you, why don't we just stop this? I love you too much. Football's too dangerous. It's just dangerous.
It wasn't too vocal, but it was just brought up like here and there, like, I don't think you should continue to play and whatnot, but we'll always support what you want to do. And it's more so like my mom. Yeah. Like, and I get it, like, I mean, I got kids too now, and it's like you can understand why the mothers are the way they are.
I mean, I definitely, as a Dolphins fan, I don't ever want to see Tua on the football field ever again. Like, every time he drops back to pass and the pass rush gets anywhere near him, I'm holding my breath. It's not the normal sports anxiety of, oh, how's my team going to do? I'm anxious. When he left the pocket and ran straight forward, I was grimacing on my couch for the few seconds before the hit even happened because you're so worried about it. And when you hear these guys who played in the NFL say it, when his family is suggesting he doesn't play, I know that there are financial implications. I know that there's pride. I know there are so many reasons why you would want to come back and play if you're Tua. But as someone just watching the sport and watching the human being, I don't ever want to have to turn on my TV and see that guy standing on the field.
I'm not certain there's a doctor that would clear Tua with confidence to say go play football again.
I don't know how we can
I'm not
say.
certain.
I don't know how we can say any of what the doctors are saying here. They have more access to information than we do. We're doing all these diagnoses from our couch, and Jeremy is saying something that I'm sure runs counter to what the grand majority of Dolphin fans feel. I believe I will find very few human beings who root for the Dolphins who will articulate what Jeremy just did. I don't know that I will find a second one that is a Dolphin fan who will say, I care about him so much that it makes me care about him more than my own personal feel-good on Sundays, and I know that my season is ruined the moment that he can't play anymore.
There are probably more Dolphins fans who were telling him not to play because of how he was struggling on the field rather than the ones who would react that way because of the injury. And that's messed up, but it's the reality is and look, I'm not in control of this. You just mentioned the doctors, right? Like, they have more information, but I'm just thinking about how many examples we have of these players who deal with multiple concussions, the ones that we don't see, and end up with, these stories that end up 10, 20, 30 years after they retire that are the most tragic things you've ever heard. We have all of this evidence of these traumatic brain injuries with Tua right in front of us, and it's like, I don't know how we can, with a good conscience, continue to watch it, but that's also football in general, putting that to the side and having the conscience to move forward.
It does feel, Jeremy, and I know you're not doing this, but it does feel like you're a little like, I'm going to outrage. Like, I
know, that's how people are going to react to it.
Concussions the most, more. It's like, I am not going to say that. Like, I want Tua to be safe.
I still watch football.
But I'm going to try. If doctors clear him 3 weeks from now, I'm not going to, call it evil.
But we know the biases that exist. Like, I'm not saying that look, I won't call it evil either. I didn't say it was, and I don't think it would be evil of anyone to clear the guy and go from there. I'm just saying we have all of these horrible examples, and 20 years from now, when, God forbid, something with Tua happens, it's like we're all just going to go, fuck. Like, it's just a nightmare watching it unfold in front of you in this way. We normally get to just put it to the side and pretend like we don't know that this is happening to all of these guys. And I still watch football. I'm not trying to outrage anyone. I would protest the sport and never watch it again. I'm wearing a UCF jacket right now because I'm excited about a bunch of fucking college kids playing tomorrow. Like, I understand that I'm speaking in circles in that regard, but it's just so hard with this singular individual to continue to watch him go out there. And we've been holding our breath now for a year and a half waiting for this exact moment. And now it happened.
They hit it well for a year because we stopped thinking about this for a year. I don't recall. I recall it sort of dissipating, my fear of him running around on the field because he wasn't doing very much of it. He wasn't running outside of the pocket. Very few quarterbacks in the entire league ran for fewer yards last year than Tua ran for because they just weren't doing that with him. The whole thing was built around trying to protect him from danger. The whole philosophy of get rid of the ball quickly. He was throwing the ball, making decisions faster than anyone in the sport.
It was a two-step drop and hit Tariq or hit Waddle over the middle. I mean, that's what the offense was last year.
Well, I'm going to ask Chris because you said maybe you were exaggerating that we stopped thinking about it for a year. I never stopped thinking about it with Tua. Me as a total neutral here, I don't know if I can speak for Dolphin fans, and that's why I want Chris's perspective, but my heart's in my throat watching that guy because I fear at any moment. And I remember the takes. I had him after the Bengals game. Look, if he's cleared by independent doctors that say you can continue your career, they know vastly more about this stuff than I do. But also, it's not going to change my prism when I watch him fearing what we saw last night because I feel like it can happen at any point with him, and that's a snap-to-snap deal.
I did not fear every drop back, but yes, anytime he's out of the pocket and I'm going to run the ball.
In the open field.
Most of the time with a runner, my thought is hold on to the rock because that's just my saying whenever a guy on my team has the ball. With Tua, it's stay safe.
Right.
So I'm not saying that I thought about it every single time. I'm not going to lie, last night, I had over 4.5 rushing yards for Tua. So my initial thought when he took off was just cash that. But I didn't. That was before the injury. But I want him to be safe. Like, yes, I'm thinking all the same things when he's running.
Not so much that you would be willing to say what Jeremy just said, which is I never want to see him in a uniform again. I never want him to see on a football field again.
I'm not judging Jeremy for saying that. I think that is extreme. And I'm like you, Dan. I want to hear the doctors, and I hear Jeremy's point. Like, I don't want him to just go to the team doctors like he did in that clip. He said, I went and I talked to people that I trusted. So I want all that to happen. It's just I'm not gonna make the statement of I don't want to see him ever again.
Chris,
I hope that he can get to a point where he can play again.
Chris, you started to say crazy of what Jeremy said. You did say extreme of what Jeremy said. But what do you do with Louis Riddick saying it, and Des Bryant saying it, and Damian Woody saying it, and Shannon Sharp saying it? Like, these are not people who have a vested interest in the emotional parts of whether the Dolphins win or not, but these are people that care about athletes being viewed as human beings, and they're not tied up in the results.
I'm down the middle, Chris, right now, like I am with politics. Like, I'm just sitting in the middle. I'm not over. Jeremy's way over there. I never want to see him again. And there's a guy way over there that's like, he should play against Seattle.
Right.
I'm just here in the middle saying, what do the doctors say?
Jessica, why are you dropping? What is happening here with your...
Oh, man, I can't say it on air, but it was a really funny joke from Jared Bear. Dan, I'm wondering when you're going to take accountability for wearing a Dolphins hat yesterday for the first time in like 20 years.
Yeah. And only because Mike Ryan called me a communist. He said I looked like a communist. A lot of people are blaming me for the single worst result in franchise history, worse than Dan Marino's retirement game, which was Jacksonville beating them 62-7. Mike Ryan is saying this is the worst that anyone has ever felt after a Dolphin game.
I think like when something bad happens, we do want to blame someone, and I'm suggesting we all just blame you.
That's fine. Yes, that's
I
good.
blame you.
Okay.
I also blame myself because I was there, and I am like terrible luck. Like, you do not want me to be anywhere near your sports teams,
but
ever.
Don't come after me. Like I said, I'm in the middle.
Right.
I'm
well,
just sitting right here.
It's not your fault
Jeremy's
it happened.
way
It's
over
Dan's
there.
fault it happened.
I'm just right here
Who
chilling
would
in
come
the middle.
after you?
Interesting,
You haven't
pointed
said
left.
anything.
What do you mean? Everyone's like, oh, you want him to play night. Like, I can already see the tweets of, like you had the over 4.5. Like, you don't care about
the doctors
people.
clear him. That's all. That's all you're
I
saying.
will say you are the only voice saying, like, I hope he does get back to playing. Like,
I hope it's safe. I hope he gets all the second, third
It's
opinions.
not safe.
Right.
I know it's not safe.
Yeah,
How many opinions, Chris? How many?
4 or 5
Right.
opinions at least.
Okay.
Not
Tua-
just the team.
Tua obviously has agency in this. Like, what he ends up doing will be his choice no matter what. But you can disagree with his choice if you're someone who was made squeamish by watching a guy get so many concussions playing football.
I think that everyone listening to this would be stunned if he retired. Simply stunned.
I would not. I would not be stunned if Tua decided today I'm no longer playing football. That's a family decision. You cannot let Tua make that decision alone. That is a decision that he should make with the family, with the organization. That should be a joint decision. I would not be Dan. I would not be shocked if he did it.
But you
today.
just heard what he said his mother said, which is, I'd like for you to retire. You said it's a family decision. I would like for you to retire, but I will support any decision you make. It's not a family decision. It's his decision and his alone.
I would push back on that. I think the organization has a responsibility here too. And I'm sure that they've played out these scenarios dating back to the last concussion. What happens if this happens again? What's our plan? Now, they gave him a big contract, but I'm sure when they were talking about that contract, the elephant in the room was his overall health. They very much care for him. That was evident. It manifested physically with a kiss on the head from the head coach.
In hindsight, a guy that's just concussed, or do we want to be yanking his head down for a kiss? Maybe just give him
that's good Friday morning quarterback.
Little tap on the butt, maybe do the same gesture.
I don't think that follows the protocol to your point, but
come here, optics.
Yeah,
give me that head.
And someone probably has a better idea of like what the contract does. If someone is forced to medically retired, maybe there is a way for him to get his money and not for it to count against the cap. But I think that there are people in that organization that care deeply for Tua the person and can separate themselves mildly even from the emotion of wanting to win and caring about this young man, because the last one was really serious, really scary. And Tua himself went on the record saying that he talked openly about retiring with his family. So I think this is a very serious thing, and the organization's got to have some input on it too.
I don't believe that we can, all of us, everybody talking about this today, doctors, organization, fans, I don't believe that anyone can do anything other than talk in circles, because you can't love Tua and love football at the same time and try to construct the argument that anything he does going forward playing football is safe. Chris can't discuss how safe he wants to keep him and then allow him to keep playing football. The oxymoron of everything happening in football, including all the rule changes, the dynamic kickoffs, everything meant to make it safer, is you can make it safer. There is no way to make a violent thing safe. And so we will talk about this, and there will be no way to have it be anything other than talking in circles, because the conflict of interests make it so that nothing we're discussing here, nothing can come up with a conclusive, decisive thing that keeps anyone safe, when what we're talking about is a player whose safety we're worrying about in a way we've never worried about a player's safety before playing this sport.
There are guys, and I want to be careful of how this sounds because it's not a knock on them. There are just guys that find out through their occupation they are not built for it. At that position, Robert Griffin III is a name that comes to mind, that your frame, your ability to get rocked on hits, the sport is telling you are just not built for this. It happens in professional wrestling. It happens with knees in other sports. And I think Tua may be approaching that class of this game. As much as you love it, your body is just telling you are not built for it.
Do you guys, though, realize that in what we're talking about, we are existing inside of a bubble, an economic bubble, a fandom bubble, where we are an echo chamber? Anyone listening to this must care about sports or football in some way. And it must seem like an asinine conversation to anyone who doesn't care about football. Like a truly asinine conversation that we're even wrestling with the idea that this person should continue to do this. That anyone who doesn't care about football would look at all of this and simply say, it's not worth it. People with financial struggles, they would say it is not worth it to do that thing and risk what he's risking.
Not just Tua, all of you. I mean, on a weekly basis.
Yeah, but
it's a dangerous game. I mean,
I understand what Dan's saying, but it's not the show that we do. It's not the world that we live in. Like we're all in this industry, and the people are listening to us because they love sports or love people talking about sports. I just think this is a really sad situation. It's if you want to take the head trauma out of it, we were talking back here. Brandon Roy is a name that comes to mind, that no matter how bad this guy wants it, no matter how bad he wants to come back, his body is just not built for the day-to-day grind of the sport because of what can happen to it. And I think Tua is in that class now.
Yeah, I think it was really hard to watch, and it only happened, like 12 hours ago. So I think we'll have to just see what they say and see how he hopefully recovers from it, and then sort of make our judgments from there. So it's kind of hard to have these like snap reactions from something, but given like the history and how much of this we've seen from this player, I understand like the very emotional and justifiably so responses from fans that are like, this sucks.
Valerie hates my Sundays, just generally. Not like Abby hates Stugotz's Sundays.
Different
because
reasons.
At the end of it, he comes around feeling sensual. Valerie hates my Sundays because they're slothy, they take me away from life, and she's always walking past the television, seeing something on the goal line and being like, oh my God, why do any of those people do any of that? Ed Oliver seems like a giant, physically hard to block human being. That
Who wants to be tackled by him?
If he hits you, it seems like it would be deeply unpleasant.
Let me tell you something about being married. Like, yeah, you can make it bigger than what it is, but she's resenting you because you just want to veg out in front of the TV. My wife has the same resentment for me because this guy's just useless. He's on 25 milligrams, melting into his couch watching NASCAR. What has become of you? Help me with our daughter.
Just 25.
That's why my boyfriend hates me every day, because I don't move. I get home from work and I don't move.
One of the reasons, Stugotz, that I believe that the Bills are one of the 4 best teams in football the last 5 years. The best teams in football are Kansas City, Baltimore, San Francisco, and Buffalo. I think everybody else over the last 5 years is a distant second from what excellence looks like in that sport. And it's not actually the winning that makes me think that. It's the stat I'm about to give you.
Okay.
It's been 43 games since the Bills lost by more than 6 points. Wow. They're always in every game because of how good their quarterback is.
It's really surprising, especially since they seem like not a great deal worse, but they seem worse than they were when they were right there with the Chiefs and just ran out of time in a playoff game. They seem worse. I can't believe that they're still hanging around these games.
They're in every game, just not the Super Bowl, the biggest of games. Make it there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they were 13 seconds away from being able to eliminate Kansas City in Kansas City during a playoff game. But I do think that that's a crazy stat I just gave you in that sport, that they're in every game. At the end of every game, the Bills have a chance to win for now. What are we looking at? More than 3 seasons. They're never getting beaten by anybody they're playing by more than a score.
That's a sign of a real good team. That means you have good line play. Your lines hold up. You won't get blown out in games. That's a real good sign.
It's also a sign you have a great quarterback. You have one of those guys. He's just not as good as the other guy.
You've got 3 seasons plus now where the Bills never play the game the Dolphins just played last night. We're sitting here trying to talk ourselves into how it is that the Dolphins are right there with the Bills, because for the division last year, they could have avoided the Bills entirely by simply beating Tennessee. And yet that game that just happened to the Dolphins last night never happens to the Bills, even though, and this part's also interesting to me, in those 42 games, you'll find games in there where they lose the turnover battle in a way that the Dolphins lost the turnover battle last night, and yet still they're in the game. In fact, one of the reasons that I would argue on behalf of the Dolphins offense being able to keep them in most games is because when I'm watching last night and Tua's got the first 2 turnovers, I'm still looking at a game that if you stop them on 3rd or 4th down is 13-7 at the half, and they're within a score because they've done other things well enough to stay in that game. I still expected, I was betting in game for the Dolphins to erase that lead, because I'm still expecting their offense to be able to look like it's a great offense, even though, as Mike said, first 2 games of this season, with all their motion and everything else, it doesn't look the same, and I don't know what to do with Tyreek Hill being ineffective. I don't know what it is to watch that game yesterday and not have to worry that Tyreek Hill, if I'm the Bills, is going to do anything during that game, because he's never had 100 yards against the Bills when he's playing for the Dolphins.
Yeah, outside of one snap, he's been largely shut down this season. And you think back to that video where he said he had surgery on his knee, but it turns out he had a treatment, some injections in his knee. You wonder if he's a different player, and you certainly wonder if you're going to have different production with someone different under center. I want to credit you guys because you waited way longer to talk about where you go from here. You're still focusing on that. It took 7 seconds for Tom Brady's name to be mentioned in my group chats last night.
I have fans. Some ideas, Mike. 13 to be exact.
All right, we'll get to that in a second. Greg Cody also badly wants to get in here. I did think it was interesting during halftime yesterday, during the Amazon Prime halftime. They were talking about if the Dolphins don't fix this in the second half, the season's going to be ruined and the narrative is going to continue. And I'm like, that's absurd. And then Tua gets hurt, and it's not absurd at all.
On the train headed to work today, I ran into a guy named Peter. He was very kind, and he said, "Hey, are you Mike Ryan from the Battle Court Cyclones?" I said, "Yes, absolutely. That is my team." It's like, "What's going on this season?" I'm like, "We're 1-0. We got a game tonight. Come out, Magic City Casino, 7 o'clock. Games available on ESPN3. Big season for us." He's like, "Mike, that's a really tough ticket." I'm like, "Don't worry. It's free. No tickets needed. But if you ever are in a situation where you need to get a tough ticket, my friend Peter, come here, let me tell you. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. It's football season. A lot of tough tickets to find all throughout this great state of Florida. Use the code Dan, my friend Peter. Get $20 off your first purchase, Peter. Terms apply, Peter. Download the Game Time app. What time is it, Peter?
Game time!
Woo!
I wish, Stugotz, that a losing NFL locker room would have both the humor and the political astuteness so that Dolphins being interviewed after the game last night would have taken the Trump approach after the debate, and just a bunch of people had been saying, well, actually, we won 87-3. We don't listen to what the facts are or what everyone else thinks, or what it may have appeared like we lost, and
we won.
But we won, and then just make up some numbers that you won by and just change them. I hope that we get to the day that football can take itself so not seriously that somebody does that in a losing locker room.
There are two things we didn't talk about yet if we're staying on the topic of Dolphins Bills. The first thing is the Dolphins just like not trying to score a touchdown before halftime. The second thing, the pistachio farm.
Oh man. I have never been more irate watching a broadcast. The fourth quarter, your little filler when we're down 21. I don't give a shit about Josh Allen's pistachio farm. Look at this thing. It's endless.
I thought that was fascinating. I had never given pistachio farms any thought before then, and thought it was an interesting fact that I did not know.
Who needs a pistachio farm?
I don't know what he has in terms of investments. I don't know why his interests would run toward pistachio farms. I did not actually know before watching that pistachios were farmed, even though it was an obvious thing. It's not something. I hadn't given it any thought. No thought.
To me, this is him. This is him just trolling other people in his division. I want a pistachio farm so that when I'm up by 20 in the fourth quarter, I can have this little nugget get out there just to stick the knife in a little more in the Jets and the Dolphins. I want a pistachio farm.
Oh, so this is just jealousy.
I just hated all of it. Just ridiculous. Get that thing out of my face. That's for like a Sunday pregame show on ESPN. That is not for fourth quarter when you're up 21 points.
I'm reading a story
Pistachio
here.
farm.
He's doing it for a second income stream.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Obnoxious. That's the most obnoxious story I've ever heard about a player in a game.
Really impressive.
He has a pistachio. If you look now, he has a pistachio farm.
His family business is farming.
Out of here.
Is that Al Michaels?
Put that thing up again. You can't see to the end of this thing. It goes on forever. How big is this pistachio farm?
How are you angrier about this than what football did to Tua last night? It's such a
How much
strange
water
thing.
are they wasting at that farm?
Wasting? He's making delicious pistachios.
There's no way he's can water every pistachio.
I
there.
love
There's way
pistachios.
too many pistachios.
Jessica, I'm not happy with the amount of judgment you just rained down on me for not knowing anything about farming. So you
How
look
did you think they were?
What a cute answer. I've never given it thought.
Classic Miami guy doesn't know shit about farms.
I actually
please.
thought that perhaps pistachios were raked out of trees. I had no idea. I had no idea how it is that pistachios were farmed.
That can't be all his farm. That has to be like maybe he gets an acre of that and he
It's
shares
the
it.
family farm. They're farmers. I told you. They grow cotton there. They do a lot there.
So annoying.
You mentioned Al Michaels and not trying to score at the end of the half, and they were really critical of the Dolphins' time management, and perhaps I shouldn't do this, but I just kind of trust that the Dolphins are managing time correctly. I believe that they know more about offense and how to use their timeouts than I do. There are going to be times that they're wrong and I'm wrong about trusting them that way. But one of the things Al Michaels said, he's in his 80s now, right? And he's gotten more criticism the last couple of years than he's ever gotten. Al Michaels was pretty disgusted with the dynamic kickoffs always ending up in just kicks through the end zone. And when one of them didn't, he used the phrase that an 80-year-old might, stop the presses.
Ah.
And I just don't think we're stopping presses for anything anymore.
I
Well, we
noticed
stopped
the
them
same
permanently.
thing.
I mean,
Yeah, we did already stop all presses.
Dan, I almost texted you about that. Al Michaels saying stop the presses is like the exact demo of guy who says stop the presses.
We're not stopping presses anymore, correct?
We don't have any presses.
It's been very
They got bought by private equity.
it's very vogue to complain about the dynamic kickoffs. Like we had a pretty big return last week. DJ Dallas house one.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it had been a while. Like, oh, it goes in for a touchback. Are you noticing this now? It happened all of last season.
We debated yesterday, and Al Michaels answered it late in the game. He said it was a statement game for the Bills last night. Yeah. I mean, we told you. We tried to tell you, Dan.
I don't believe that game twos throughout the history of all game twos, I don't believe any of them have ever been any kind of statement that anyone remembers. But Mike Ryan just came in here and said that is the worst anyone's ever felt after a Dolphin game. And so if that's the feeling left by the Bills, I have to put down my sword and concede, well, some sort of statement was made if Jeremy doesn't want Tua to ever play football again. And Mike is saying that's the worst the Dolphins have ever felt after a football game.
That's a statement. I mean,
Part of your framing for the fake pregame show was like, you have this team now, the boogeyman inside your division. It's your time to tell them that it's not their time anymore. Well, we learned the answer to that. It's certainly still their time inside the division as it pertains directly to the Miami Dolphins, and now they are in much worse shape than they were entering that game.
The other statement that the Bills made is, look at what we did to your best guy with a guy who last year for us was actually dead on the field.
2 years ago.
Yeah, he was just
It's a fine.
Yeah, not playing for them last season.
Yeah.
That was a little funny, right? That was, like
Odd correction.
It was just like an odd experience. Like it does flash over your mind, like you're worried about Tua, and then you're like, oh, that's Damar Hamlin. That's odd. That's kind of one player on that team that makes this extra interesting.
It's also allegedly where it is the Bills are weaker this year. Because he's starting, it's because their secondary isn't supposed to be as good as it was last year. Their defensive line is overwhelming. The Dolphins still have an offensive line problem. And Stugotz, not a coincidence that all of that stuff was happening to and around Tua the moment the left side of his offensive line went to the sidelines and the Bills started ravaging like cannibals because all of a sudden you can't get rid of the ball with anyone open in 2 or 3 seconds. Where is Greg Cody? Your father has wanted to get in here. He is eager from the fringes to get in on the show. Where is your father?
We're actually struggling with Zoom today, so we're going to old school it. I just texted Lewis, my dad's number. We're going to call him old school. Lewis, just tell me when we got him. And my dad,
Nice.
he texted me too. He wants in on this morning.
All right.
So are we waiting?
No, I'll let you know when we got him, but yeah,
Okay.
we're going to call him.
What kind of feedback are we getting on today's show? Like, are we doing a good job? Are we voicing all the concerns? Is anyone, like, are Dolphin fans mad at us? I heard from Ray Rado. He says you're nailing it, Dan.
Want me to go read some YouTube comments, Mike? Will that help?
Yeah, I think it would. I
I'll
would like
report
to know,
back.
like, this is all new, right? Well, unfortunately with Tua, it's not that new, but we received a lot of feedback on the last time we had Kristen Winsky on, and I wonder if, like, we're doing better or if the rest of the audience is kind of caught up with where you were. I would just like to know how this is going over, because we are talking about a guy that just received a huge contract, a guy that had an entire healthy season, that you convince yourself this is the answer, and now you seem more unsure of that than maybe at any point in his career.
I just don't know how sincere any of the grave concern is for Dolphins fans beyond how their feel-good and their season is affected by this. I don't
think you're giving fans enough credit for caring about this particular quarterback and thinking to themselves, I had a friend last night text me who's been a season ticket holder for 20 years, and he said, I never want to see Tua play quarterback again.
Jeremy has season tickets.
Now, he said that before the injury, and then he said it more definitively after the injury. He did.
I don't
say that to me.
don't think, maybe I've got this wrong. Maybe my lifetime around fans and what they actually care about, I find fans to be pretty selfish. I don't find that very often they actually care about the human being playing the games more than they care about themselves, which is what you're saying right now. You're saying that there are a lot of Dolphin fans out there caring more about Tua than they care about their Sundays, their team, their identity, their allegiances. My experience with fans generally doesn't go that way.
I'm not saying all. I'm saying there are probably more than ever that could sympathize with what's going on with Tua because they've seen it. They've seen, Dan, the fans have seen what we've seen. They have seen things they've never seen from a player on an NFL football field, and it's jarring. And yes, I'd like to give the fan base the benefit of the doubt. Not all of them, some of them, that they'd be okay with Tua retiring today.
I think of you as a fan,
yes,
first and foremost. And if Aaron Rodgers right now had to leave for some reason, I don't believe that you would choose Aaron Rodgers' well-being over your well-being.
Yeah, but am I armed with seeing out of Aaron Rodgers what we've seen out of Tua over the last 3 years? I'm not. That's the big difference in this particular situation and why I think fans are sympathetic towards Tua.
I've never seen you care about anyone more than you care about yourself.
Well, that's fair. I mean,
the YouTube commenters are saying positive things, Dan. I think it's been great, thoughtful and helpful discussions. I think you're hitting complex issues with a lot of analysis while keeping the fun of your show. Glad you guys are here on a Friday for once. That wasn't necessary.
I don't want compliments. Read the mean ones.
That was kind of mean to everybody else that's here on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Jess is the worst. Okay.
I'm being told
Feel
here
better now?
we have my dad here, so I don't
Oh,
know.
we do.
All right.
Oh, here we go.
Do we have him?
I mean, we're calling him.
It's
Like I said,
ringing.
old school, Dano.
Suggest we don't have him.
Dad? Greg?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dad?
And you know it.
Dad?
Baby.
Greg?
Babe.
Dad?
Do it. Yeah, do it. Doing it.
Dad?
Who needs me? Yeah, who needs me?
Dad?
Who needs me?
What is happening right now?
Who needs me? That kind of thing. That kind of thing.
All right, we're going to cancel that.
Was that a spanking I heard? Were there two spanking sounds in there that I heard?
I don't like any of that.
It's called fapping.
Jessica, did I see on what it is that you were doing last night during the televising of Trey Wingo's extravaganza that there was an enye over the N in your last name, like Larrañaga?
Dan, I'm glad you noticed that. Yes, Trey Wingo gave me a little flourish on my last name last night when he introed me.
Let's go back down to Miami now and talk about another dream, the idea of the Dolphins doing well. Jess Matanya is there. Jess Matanya.
Classic Hal. I mean,
welcome, native Miamian.
Jess Matanya.
I don't know if any of you appreciate the awkwardness that we have found in Ken Jennings hosting Jeopardy, but I believe that we miss Trebek in a number of different ways. But one of the ways that you end up missing broadcasters, Stugotz, is when others do it less well, and then you see, oh, Tom Brady. That doesn't sound right to me. There are things missing here. You sort of take for granted the way things are broadcast well, and Trebek did it so well, better than everybody, that moments like this rarely happened on Jeopardy. This is how people interact on television if they don't actually care about what each other are saying.
Amanda White is here from Seattle, where she's a strategy consultant. I don't get to say this often enough on this stage, Amanda. You have a serial killer story, is that right?
My middle school hall monitor was always a little bit odd, very friendly, but weird. Turns out he was hall monitoring during the day and doing something very different at night. He was caught with 7 bodies buried under his house.
Wow, interesting. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
keep it moving.
What? Interesting. Welcome to the show.
Wow, interesting, I say, reading from a card, not listening at all to the facts that were in the pre-production meeting about 7 bodies found.
7 bodies, you say? Interesting.
You mentioned that you mentioned that Josh Allen was doing this for
Hold on,
secondary
Mike.
income.
Enough with the farms.
Mike, just before we get back to the
stats.
farms, let's just play this back again for Jessica and everybody so we can appreciate the dark humor awkwardness in Ken Jennings being bad at this.
Amanda, why Is here from Seattle, where she's a strategy consultant. And I don't get to say this often enough on this stage, Amanda. You have a serial killer story. Is that right?
My middle school hall monitor was always a little bit odd, very friendly, but weird. Turns out he was hall monitoring during the day and doing something very different at night. He was caught with 7 bodies buried under his house.
Wow, interesting. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Wait, he was a hall monitor?
Wait, you want follow-ups from Jennings? What do you want there?
I want
Trebek
something.
would have roasted her.
Maybe
like,
just
he would
say,
have roasted her.
"Whoa, that's crazy," or something.
Something, right.
Something that was not reading, wow, interesting, from a card, an index card, and then saying, welcome to the show.
Although maybe it was so, it was funny because it was that way. Like, Trebek would have said something very dry and then would have been like, welcome to the show. But I don't know. I mean, to each his own. Either
Do
way,
it.
what the fuck?
Do it.
Pro football was Josh Allen's side hustle. He received a ton of acclaim for his work in the agricultural field in high school. He was a higher-ranked farmer than he was a football player coming out of high school.
Wow.
He had a national rank in the top 4 in the nation in diversified crop production in cantaloupe, cotton, and wheat in 2014.
Wow,
Put
one of
it
the
on
all-time greats.
Put it on Sunday NFL Countdown. I don't want it when I'm down 21 in the fourth quarter.
Dan, I know you were looking for more fan reaction. Our social media team put out the bite of me saying, as a Dolphins fan, I don't want to see Tua on the football field ever again, which was very kind of them. Looking through the replies, the first response was, God, I hate Jeremy.
Yeah, I think that you're going out to the extremes on where it is Dolphin fandom exists. I think most people are closer to Chris, which is
Down the
just
middle, Chris.
stay in the middle while secretly being scared of saying, yeah, Tua needs to get back out there and save our season.
That's not how I feel.
No.
I'm in the middle guy. That guy's over there.
Right.
Jeremy's that way. The guy saying he needs to get back is over there.
Let's
Middle guy right here.
Let's be clear. If the doctors clear him, that's what Chris is
Multiple
saying.
doctors.
Yes, multiple doctors.
And
Correct.
Tua and his family
Right.
decide
Yes.
that this is something they would still like
Put
to
all
do.
the
For the 7th
responsibility
time.
on others.
So Jeremy should decide? You know what? I like that idea better. Jeremy, tell me who should play this weekend.
Nope.
I mean, not this weekend. Tua definitely should not play football this weekend.
I don't
I'll
think
tell you
the UCF center should play this weekend.
that. Well, I mean, that's just ridiculous.
I do not often see, and I don't know how many other examples you guys have of Des Bryant and Shannon Sharp and Damian Woody and Louis Riddick, people who know football, know the risks of football, know the pain and the violence involved with football. I don't have a lot of other examples of those people giving voice to that person shouldn't play anymore.
Now that you mention UCF, there is a UCF story I would like to talk about. Jeremy, are you familiar with the Antonio Brown UCF connection?
No comment.
So, through some internet sleuthing, look, it's long been maintained and known that Antonio Brown does not run his controversial Twitter account. I think a big piece of evidence is its ability to string out complete, coherent sentences sometimes. But he's gone on the pivot and said that he doesn't run it or anything like that. But the internet deduced who was. And according to some sleuthing, it is a video coordinator on the UCF basketball coaching staff who is a white guy. Now, if you are familiar with how problematic the account often is and the words that it uses, this is highly problematic, amongst other things, that a college basketball video coordinator who is white is running this account. Now, Antonio Brown has since denied the claims, going against his own word and saying, no, I run that account. However, in trying to take some of the blame off of this alleged person that's been running his account, he actually further incriminated them by confirming that this person is tied to his enterprise by just being there as a management type. So we have Antonio Brown saying what he says now, held up with the common knowledge that he doesn't actually run his account. And now we have a name that is a white name that is attached to this account that has been using the N-word, that has been highly misogynistic, that has said horrible things about Caitlin Clark, amongst others, and the fact that this dude is a staffer on a college basketball program inside the Big 12.
I appreciate, Mike, a number of different things that you're doing with your college sports coverage, and one of them that you're doing is you're going after Nick Saban in a way I haven't seen a whole lot of other people going after Nick Saban, as Nick Saban tries to protect the power and the money staying somewhat the same in college sports and denying kids their proper value. I don't see a lot of people calling Nick Saban out the way that you've been doing it.
I'm genuinely, is Nick Saban just a lobbyist now? And I'm not saying that with sarcasm. I want to know because it seems as though he is certainly lobbying on behalf of the NCAA's best interest, according to them. And what they are seeking is safe harbor status. And what we can't allow is safe harbor status. And in all his speaking engagements, he says, quote, NIL is too difficult to police. So what he wants to do is eliminate a free market. Keep in mind, Nick Saban is a head coach who had a contract clause that specifically stated, if someone gets more money than me, I automatically get more money than them. I am the top of my sport, and I deserve to be paid as such. He is often on ESPN, often on Aflac commercials. I'm pretty sure when these opportunities present themselves to Nick Saban, he isn't just saying, you know, whatever you bureaucrats decide to give me, I'll just go ahead and take it. I'm sure there's a negotiation going there. So for Nick Saban to come out and say no free market for players for the labors that he built his name on, but that doesn't apply to anybody else, I think it should be met with more scrutiny. I really should. You make millions. You are the absolute legend of this era of the game, and you're just pulling the ladder up behind you. It is absurd that he gets to take this position to represent the NCAA in this fashion and is not once challenged on it during his many media appearances. That's fine that he can have that opinion. I'm also of the opinion that something needs to be done. But, dude, you are pretty well protected, and it comes off as if, like, the good old boy network protects its own. Because when Mark Emmert was here, I had a clean program. And then he retires, and I shortly retired thereafter. And you see Ted Cruz showing up, talking to Texas A&M. Why are these programs giving this specific plan buy-in? It makes you wonder all sorts of things. But I would say Nick Saban is certainly entitled to his opinions. He should be challenged on his hypocrisies because he certainly hasn't carried his career both during his coaching days and now in media as if he's fine not having fair market value. He should be challenged on this, and he hasn't been.
I always assume that his perspective is going to do something that maintains control of something closer to the status quo because, as you've heard me say before all across America, generally speaking, people don't give away their power. It has to be taken from them. He's been in power for a very long time, and the power was taken from him in a way that made him very tired, saw everyone else catch up, and then all of the rules changed in a way that seemed ungovernable to him. And so what he wants, what he longs for, is the day that feels more like the day when he ruled the earth.
When it was more ungovernable. I'm sorry, did we think that players weren't getting paid before NIL? If anything, we have more transparency now to this, to what we have always known, and it's also dispersed the talent pool more evenly. There are about 5 teams right now that you can see have a legitimate shot at winning a national title. There aren't these mega teams where it's just like it's Alabama and everybody else this year and maybe someone can catch them. Even Georgia isn't as good as it was in terms of NFL talent as it had been previously. The sport has changed. He doesn't like that it's changed. And the fair market, that only applies to the people in power, apparently, according to Nick Saban.
Stugotz has in front of him something that he wanted to do to lead off the show. But
we have to turn the page, Dano.
Alarms have been going off in my head, though, that we have now gone enough sufficient time showing proper concern and respect for humanity. And now Stugotz is allowed to give you his list of the people who should be considered for quarterback for the Dolphins next weekend.
Yes.
How many are on that list?
I have 13.
All right, so you've got, and again,
but I could shorten it to 5.
Well, Jessica's head is in her hands because she doesn't think the proper amount of concern has been shown for humanity.
Huh?
I just think 13's way too many.
Oh, really?
You got to narrow it down.
I mean, I can go 5 if you want.
No, OLI. Let's go. Bang through OLI quickly.
Taysom Hill. Let's find out if this guy can play quarterback.
That's a lot of money that you'd have to give up. Go ahead. Keep going.
Josh McCown.
What?
Should be there.
He's 40, isn't he?
He's always there.
Yeah, someone's always calling him late in the season.
Go ahead.
Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix.
right, a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, not for Penix.
Josh McCown is 45.
Andy Dalton.
Wow.
Red Rifle. Reliable.
Keep going.
Bryce Young.
What? Why?
You can get Bryce Young. He was the number 1 pick in the draft. You can get him for cheap right now. You get him off Carolina's hands. Mike McDaniel probably thinks he can make something of Bryce Young.
Keep going.
Trey Lance.
5 interceptions.
Why not?
All right.
I love that logic.
You really should just put "why not" on the back of the uniform. Go ahead. Keep going.
Phillip Rivers. Dare the Dolphins to say no. Go ahead.
Keep going.
Number 5, Joe Flacco. Number 4.
Sorry.
Russell Wilson. Russ.
Last couple, I'm listening.
Number 3, Jimmy Garoppolo.
You have my attention.
He's got a PED suspension right now.
Well, how many more games?
I'm not exactly sure, but I found out he was a Ram the other day.
Get out of here.
Yeah, he's a Ram.
I think it's a 4-game suspension, so 2 more to go.
You know how I found out? My wife was watching the Niners. She's like, hey, where's a cute guy?
Put it on the poll. Did you know Garoppolo was a Ram?
Number 2, Ryan Tannehill. And number 1, of course, goes without saying. I'm certain a call has been made already. Thomas Brady.
Calls were made famously.
We open up the club next.